You think a restaurant is just a place to eat? In the American South, there is a diner so reliable that the federal government uses it to measure the scale of a disaster. When a hurricane hits, FEMA does not just track wind speed, it checks whether the local Waffle House is still open. Because if a Waffle House goes dark, the damage is catastrophic. They call it the Waffle House Index. You will discover how two neighbors built a 24-hour diner that refuses to close, how a plate of hash browns became a symbol of American resilience, and how Waffle House became the most trusted disaster sensor in the country. And by the end, you will learn what it actually takes to keep the grills running through a Category 5 hurricane, and the one disaster that finally went and shut almost all of them down. It all starts with a real estate agent who sold a cook a house. This is the fascinating story of an American institution. How does a roadside waffle stand become the thing America watches when disaster strikes? Most restaurants have keys. Waffle House doesn't. Regulars joke that when a new location opens, the managers immediately throw the front door keys into a fresh patch of wet concrete. It is barely an exaggeration. The yellow and black sign stays lit through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the dead of night. Christmas dinner is served on a heavy stoneware plate with a side of hot coffee and a stranger's conversation. A single rule defines this entire system: never close. Grills never cool down. The grease on the flat top is a living history, scraped clean but never empty, sizzling through every shift change. Every single day, the yellow beacon signals that somewhere inside, a burner is hot. This absolute reliability did not happen by accident. It began with a quiet pact between two post-war neighbors who wanted to see if a simple roadside stand could survive the night. In 1949, a real estate broker named Tom Faulkner sold a house in the quiet Atlanta suburb of Avondale Estates to a man named Joe Rogers Sr. They became next-door neighbors, sharing fences and a post-war drive to build something permanent. Both were World War II veterans who understood the gravity of absolute discipline. Rogers had piloted B-24 bombers as an Army Air Corps captain, while Faulkner had served as a military intelligence officer for the Manhattan Project. At the time, Rogers was already a seasoned executive, climbing from a short-order cook to regional manager for the Toddle House diner chain. He understood the frantic rhythm of the grill. Faulkner, with his deep knowledge of local land development, understood how to anchor a business in the path of progress. Together, they pooled $4,000 of their own savings to test a radical concept, pairing the lightning speed of a drive-in with the physical comfort of a 24-hour sit-down counter. Determined to secure their profit margins early, Faulkner calculated the food costs and named the restaurant after the most lucrative item on the menu: the waffle. On Labor Day weekend in 1955, the doors swung open at 2719 East College Avenue. It was a simple glass and brick box. 10 employees staffed the original U-shaped counter, generating $50,000 in sales by the end of their first year. This immediate surge of customers forced Rogers into a dangerous double life, balancing his demanding corporate job at Toddle House against an independent late-night gamble that was quickly outgrowing its small suburban lot. Joe Rogers Sr. looked at the crowded counter and realized they were serving more than breakfast. He defined their mission with a simple rule: they were in the people business, and the kitchen was just a tool to bring them together. Those 10 original employees did more than flip eggs. They anchored a community. At 3 in the morning, the glass box on College Avenue became a sanctuary. Shift workers, truck drivers, and night owls sat shoulder to shoulder, transforming a simple restaurant into a shared public living room. The $50,000 in first-year sales proved the financial model, but the true asset was the trust built across a laminated counter. Rogers spent his days managing Toddle House and his nights sweeping his own floors. He lived on black coffee and adrenaline. This divided loyalty was sustainable only until his corporate employers noticed his distraction. For 5 years, Rogers walked a corporate tightrope. He spent his days executing Toddle House directives across the Southeast, then slipped into the Avondale Estate's kitchen late at night, teaching Faulkner the exact science of short-order cooking. He groomed his partner to run the business on the side, preserving his day job while the side venture grew. In 1960, hoping to merge his two professional paths, Rogers asked to buy a partnership stake in Toddle House. The corporate board refused. That rejection ended his 12-year career. Rogers resigned immediately, packed his bags, and returned to Atlanta to build his own empire. The brand was still a tiny 3-store operation, but Rogers and Faulkner began securing cheap land along Georgia's emerging interstate highway system. Reinvesting every dollar of profit without relying on outside capital, they expanded to 27 locations by the end of the decade. By 1995, the chain crossed the 1,000-store milestone. A simple neighborhood counter had scaled into a massive, permanent, regional presence. Managing this sudden sprawl forced the founders to codify a highly unusual kitchen culture, starting with a language only their staff could understand. Step up to the high-backed counter, and the menu shifts into a rapid-fire shorthand. Potatoes are never simply fried. They are scattered flat across the hot steel, smothered under sweet sautéed onions, and covered in a thick layer of melted American cheese. This trademarked vocabulary, scattered, smothered, and covered, acted as a secret handshake, transforming a basic breakfast order into an insider ritual. But this distinct identity extended far beyond the plate. In the 1980s, the chain launched Waffle Records, a highly unusual in-house music label that pressed original vinyl exclusively for the dining room jukeboxes. While label head Shelby White managed the daily recording sessions, Joe Rogers Sr. personally policed the final track list. The founder flatly rejected any song that sounded like a commercial, demanding tunes that felt like genuine late-night companions, rather than corporate marketing pitches. This eccentric, self-made world anchored the diner into the Southern psyche, building an unmatched reservoir of customer loyalty. But a massive threat was brewing over the warm waters of the Gulf Coast, poised to test whether this quirky neighborhood sanctuary could withstand a complete collapse of civil infrastructure. In late August 2005, Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, tearing a path of ruin directly through the brand's heartland. Winds peaking at 140 miles per hour, shredded buildings, and severed power grids. By Sunday night, 7 Waffle House restaurants were entirely erased from the map, reduced to bare concrete slabs. Over 100 more lay swamped in toxic floodwaters, dark and silent. This disaster threatened more than profit margins. It targeted the raw survival of isolated communities. With communication lines dead and roads choked with debris, the company's leadership had to find a way to reach their stranded crews before the food ran out. Joe Rogers Jr., then presiding over the company, did not wait for official safety clearance. He packed his car with cash, bottled water, and satellite phones, driving straight toward the devastated coast. The scale of the destruction defied previous corporate playbooks. 107 Waffle House restaurants stood dark, their windows blown out and their grills cold. It was the largest concentrated shutdown in the company's history, a staggering blow to a brand built on staying open. Yet, as the floodwaters began to recede, the immediate priority became physical survival, rather than corporate damage assessment. Within 48 hours, emergency crews managed to clear debris from the roads, opening narrow pathways to a handful of locations. The moment those doors unlocked, a strange phenomenon occurred. Stranded residents, National Guardsmen, and utility workers flooded the dining rooms, empty of power but desperate for warmth. Lines wrapped around the parking lots. Customers gathered to confirm who had survived, seeking human connection alongside a hot meal. Employees cooked on gas-powered flat tops under the dim glow of emergency lanterns, serving hot coffee, scrambled eggs, and plates of hash browns. Sales at these battered, powerless outposts rose to triple their normal volume within days, proving that the demand for a stable harbor was absolute. An open restaurant in a ruined town served as physical proof that normalcy would return. Watching communities assemble around their counters, Wajib Rogers and his team realized that emergency service constituted the core of their business identity. They needed a systemic, military-grade strategy to ensure no future storm could ever turn their lights out. But rebuilding a dining chain into a rapid deployment force meant engineering a supply chain that could survive a total infrastructure collapse. In 2004, amid the wreckage of Hurricane Charlie, Florida Emergency Management Director Craig Fugate looked at his disaster maps and realized his data was lagging behind the reality on the ground. He needed a faster way to locate the hardest-hit neighborhoods. He began tracking which local businesses were actually trading. Amid darkened residential blocks and shattered strip malls, the yellow signs of Waffle House were often the only lights burning. Fugate synthesized this observation into a simple, three-color shorthand that emergency teams could use instantly. Green meant the diner had power, a full menu, and the surrounding area was mostly stable. Yellow signaled a restaurant running on backup generators, serving a limited menu to a community without power or water. Red meant the doors were locked, indicating severe structural damage or extreme local danger. This basic color scale gave emergency managers an instant ground-level diagnostic tool for human survival. Yet keeping these yellow and black signs lit while the rest of the physical infrastructure collapsed demanded a level of raw logistical preparation that the restaurant industry had never seen. When Craig Fugate took command of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, he brought his Florida emergency playbook directly into the halls of federal power. The informal index was no longer a local secret. It was a nationwide standard. During major storms, federal analysts plotted the operational status of individual diners directly onto geographic information systems, overlaying corporate data with satellite feeds to prioritize emergency rescue teams. The logic was blunt, stripped of bureaucratic jargon. As Fugate famously warned his teams, if you get there and the Waffle House is closed, that's really bad. That's where you go to work. This metric transformed the chain from a late-night diner into a vital diagnostic sensor of American resilience. After Hurricane Katrina, journalists mapped the hardest-hit corridors of the Gulf Coast, not by wind speed charts, but by tracking Waffle House outages. An open restaurant served as proof that local utilities were still functioning, while a closed one signaled a complete collapse of local infrastructure. But keeping those grills hot when the entire physical world lay shattered around them required an operational command structure that functioned less like a kitchen staff and more like a private standing army. Inside an office park in Norcross, Georgia, an operations team monitors barometric pressure and live radar loops. When a hurricane spins toward the coast, this room transforms into a tactical dispatch hub. They do not wait for the storm to clear. Instead, they deploy the EM-50, a mobile command vehicle rigged with satellite links, generators, and a backup kitchen. While local staff secure their own homes, out-of-state jump teams of managers fly in to take over the grills. They pre-position truckloads of ice, bottled water, and generators just outside the storm's projected path. When the grid goes dark, these teams strip the offering down to a no-power menu of eggs and hash browns cooked on propane flat tops. This is not about chasing profit. It is a calculated exercise in survival. Yet keeping the burners hot means nothing if the supply lines carrying the food are completely severed by the storm. Behind the corporate strategy lies a simple, stubborn rule. You show up. When a hurricane leaves a coastal town dark and shattered, the chief executive does not watch from an executive suite. He pulls on an apron, grabs a spatula, and works the line in a battered, powerless diner. Through the steam of the flat top, the yellow sign becomes a makeshift sanctuary. First responders sit beside families who lost their roofs hours earlier, sharing hot coffee and quiet relief. There are no television cameras, only the steady rhythm of eggs hitting the grill. This quiet, ordinary service provides a brief anchor of normalcy, yet even the most hardened disaster plan was helpless against a silent, invisible crisis creeping toward the dining room doors. In March 2020, an invisible pathogen achieved what decades of Category 5 hurricanes could not. The chain's famous always open promise suddenly struck a hard, biological wall. Compelled by local mandates, the company shuttered 418 locations. FEMA's tracking maps flashed red without a single storm cloud in the sky, exposing a vulnerability no backup generator could patch. Yet the system did not collapse. With 1,500 dining rooms still cooking, the family-owned company held the line, setting up a final test of whether a simple roadside promise can survive an increasingly volatile future. Today, as storms grow more unpredictable, that glowing yellow sign stands as a stubborn baseline of human grit. True resilience does not wait for a government response. It starts over a hot griddle in a darkened town. The next time the skies turn black, that yellow light remains a promise that life goes on. What does community resilience mean to you? Let us know below.